to Raconteurs News.
Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. Another week, another great lineup of guests, and as ever, we've got this wonderful heat wave of the summer. Are you suffering in the heat as well, Jason?
Yes, I've been suffering terribly. I've got a terrible heat rash. I've also got it's given me terrible Queen's knee as well, and a little bit of tennis elbow, shall we say. I've been playing too much tennis and doing stuff.
Queen's knee? Oh, I daren't ask.
Queen's knee, I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it is, but my mother used to go on about it all the time when I was a kid. So somebody would have a dodgy knee and she'd call it Queen's knee. I don't know what it means, and I really don't know the origin. So
I've never heard of that. It must be a Sheffield thing. Anyway, on with tonight. We've got two of the old favourites from Raconteurs News joining us tonight for a bit of an update. And from what I gather, there's been quite a lot going on. So welcome back to Raconteurs News, Tom Crawford and Guy Taylor. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Andy and Jason.
Evening, Tom. Evening, Guy.
Evening, Jason.
So let's. Where do we start? I mean, there's been tons going on, haven't there? We've not spoken for the last 6 months or so. So how's about you give us a brief update, or any sort of update, a long one if you want. Anybody, Tom or Guy?
Do you want to start, Tom?
Yeah, why not? It's been hectic the last 6 months, battling the bad guys as normal. We may not get so much trolling lately because they're all attacking Jeremy Corbyn just now, so I'm told that he's got hundreds of thousands of them. We've got one group. It's called the Wake Up Project. We're travelling the country now, and basically, hopefully, letting the youngsters in the universities know exactly what's happening to them, the misinformation they've been taught.
Sorry, before you get into that, Tom, am I right in saying that it's recently been the 1 year anniversary since they came and stole your house?
Yeah, and a week. Yeah,
a year and a week. Right. Okay. I'm just wondering how you coped with that, how you reacted, how's the family doing, and all that sort of thing. We need, how's your wife and obviously your kids?
Well, that's a big question. We're not in a great position.
Okay. Are you still there, Tom?
So we're pretty good.
So I think we just started to lose you there a bit, Tom. I don't know if you were at that at your end, Andy.
Yeah, sorry, we just got from you not in a great position, and then we couldn't hear any more from you, Tom.
Sorry about that. No, we're not in a great position because we don't have a home. Strong, more together, and we're more focused, and we're more determined. So, we're causing them a lot of trouble now.
Yeah, that we did get that time. It's just like you said, bit of a dodgy connection tonight, Tom. So apologies for that. Tom's having a bit of trouble with his internet connection, but we'll soldier on through it as we all normal do, and we usually get there in the end.
How did you mark that anniversary, Tom? Did you do anything specific? Did you do anything, or did you just sort of were reminded that it happened and just sort of let it wash over you?
We had a meet up, and then we let everybody know about the anniversary, and basically not an awful lot to do because all the irons were in the fire prior to the house. I pointed at the neighbours and I pointed at the police, and not an awful lot on the 2nd of July this year.
No, no. And of course, it popped up on my Facebook timeline as one of my memories of being outside the court in Nottingham when we were supporting you when you were in there. I think it was the 1st of May or 1st or 2nd of May or something like that.
Yeah.
How do you look back on that now, and do you think that you handled things in the correct in the best possible way?
I handled them in the way that they would allow me to handle them. It was controlled by them. I've had many other court cases since then, and we can now see how they manipulate the courts. The only way now we've discovered is the criminal courts, because that's where we are going to take all of our evidence before a jury and present it to them without the interference and the manipulation of the CPR rules, which they either totally
They
break.
selectively enforce them, don't they? The rules they selectively enforce them, and if you're the defendant, then you're not necessarily party to what sort of rules that they're going to impose.
Yeah, but I've been the claimant as well, and I've had judges turn around and say we don't care about the law. That was a QC that told me that in court. That I'm going to get the transcript of that, and that's treasonable, actually. I've had ones that say, well, that's good enough for me, as well. It's they just ignore. They will not go against their own.
Yeah. It's so you've become the claimant in a lot of cases. So what sort of cases are you brought forward as a claimant in the criminal
Royal
court?
Courts of Justice. Not in the criminal court as yet. Well, I've been, apart from an alleged assault on a police officer, where the police officers were proved to be perjuring themselves in court just because we had the video evidence. And that's what's coming down the line to them, because our eviction, surprise to them, it was totally documented, and they were shocked because they sealed off the whole place so no one could enter or leave, and they called the BBC but didn't allow them in, and fortunately somebody was there with a camera and filmed the whole lot. In a series, this is why they wouldn't let me get into court after I got onto the roof. I had to phone them up 20 times, the police, same the CPS, and they were passing me from one to the other. And it wasn't until I went to see the Police and Crimes Commissioner that was forced that they had to charge me. Otherwise, it's the first time somebody claiming to be doing a burglary, the police helped him down, carried his bags, and asked him when he would like the police to come to the police station. They didn't know what to do.
So it must be it's taken quite a toll on you. I don't really want to dwell on that. I know you've got a lot of supporters. How have you been? Are you still getting lots of messages of support from people? I know that websites like Get Out Debt Free and things like that, they are promoting what you've been doing, on their websites as well. Have you still got the same amount of support as you had sort of a year ago, or do you think that it's sort of gone a bit quiet and you're playing your cards a little closer to your chest these days?
Oh, I do that, yeah, play the cards, but we've got just as much support. But there again, because of what we're doing, it's not until I actually do something physical that all our supporters come out. Otherwise, you just sit in the background watching Facebook, and you say Get Out of Debt supports me. I think 99.9 support me, not just Get Out of Debt. It's only those statists and to go along with the situation, supporting the banks and such like. that are against me. But yeah, I still get great support.
Go on, Andy.
That's great. Yeah. I hear you say that you're going for the jury trial next. I know that they're very loath to make case law in these, particularly in these sort of cases when they know they're wrong. You've got them backed into a corner. Have you got a way you're going to get around that, Tom?
Yeah, as I said, we've got all our irons in the fire. In fact, today I was speaking to their side, a legal beagle, but not working for them, and he was commending me on the approach. Very canny, he said, and it looks really interesting.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Guy, how are you doing, Guy?
Very well, sir.
Oh, right. So I just thought, moving on. Let's see how you're doing. What you've been up to? You were going to tell us about a court case recently. Did you get a no case to answer?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been no case to answer going on all over the UK. I tell every other day there's someone coming away based on no case to answer. And if I can explain a little bit, up until 1997, if you were charged with an either way offence, an indictable offence, then what would happen is you'd go before the magistrates. They'd have to prove that there was a case to answer before you went to the Crown Court.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask for what was called a Section 116 committal, or an old-style committal. And this means that the magistrates would have to make a decision based on the evidence that was presented, the prosecution evidence. There's no defence evidence called at this point. But based on the prosecution evidence, not if anyone was guilty or not guilty, but if there was indeed a case to answer. And that's what they call a prima facie case. Mm-hmm. And then, so if you went to the magistrates' courts back in the 80s, up until 1997, you'd go in there, and if you didn't offer a plea and you instructed your lawyers to say there was no case to answer, they'd have what I called an old-style committal, Section 116 committal.
Uh-huh.
At this hearing, the prosecution would present the case, and then the defence would argue the merits of the case or the narrative of the case, and the magistrates would then say, well, there is or there isn't a case to answer. It would then go to the Crown Court. You could still say you could still hold your plea, and at the end of the prosecution's case, you would, or indeed you could offer it in the beginning, but at the end of the prosecution's case, you would say there's no case to answer, and the jury would retire, and you would say there wasn't a case to go before the jury. And then in 1997, when Tony Blair got in, that changed, and they said that the rules concerning that type of committal were no longer to be used because they were used by gangsters and terrorists only. This somewhat changed the dynamics of the court cases, and of course, since that time, people just go to a magistrates for one hearing and they end up in Crown Court without even being presented with an indictment. So they didn't get rid of it. They said it can only be used in exceptional circumstances. Well, the only exceptional circumstances I've managed to find are cases when lawyers have been prosecuted, bent lawyers, and they've used it. So anyway, let's move on. So I'm looking at that. When a case gets to the court, to the Crown Court, or to the Magistrates' Court, they have to establish whether there is a case to answer.
Right. Sorry. Can I just interject here? I mean, if anybody's, just for people that are at home, there are three different types of criminal offences. There's summary offence, there's indictable offences, and there's what they call triable either way.
Yes.
Yes. So you're talking about indictable and triable either way, really. I mean, because you can select to go to Crown Court to be indicted for something that might be a summary offence.
That's right, Jason. But the problem is, you see, what happens is when you go to court, the first thing they do, they say, who are you, where are you from, and they get those details. Then the first thing they do is give you a false dilemma. They say to you, are you guilty or not guilty of the offence? Now that is a false dilemma, because the offence may not have even happened. Therefore, you can't go pleading guilty. I mean, it's bad enough pleading not guilty to something that you haven't done. Never mind pleading not guilty to something that hasn't happened. And so, very often in cases, the CPS overcharge people. So they'll charge them with the most ridiculous offence, hoping that something sticks. But of course, that most ridiculous offence that they've charged you with may not have even happened. So that's where their dilemma starts. So by holding on no case to answer, you use a case law called Galbraith. They have to prove that there is a case to answer, that a person of reasonable standard would think there was a case to answer before they offer it to the jury.
Right.
So that's where that stands. So people now have been using that on various cases, even in summary matters, because of course there has to be a case to answer, and otherwise the case shouldn't have been brought. So there's been a great deal of success around the country with people doing it in matters of schools, because of course private companies people think it's the schools prosecuting them for not sending their kids to school or whatever. But of course it's not. It's private companies that are bringing these prosecutions. So people are starting to recognise that and experiment with it, and there's starting to be a great deal of success in that area. And I've been helping people. I know we're going to talk about the case that I specifically had the appeal upheld, but I've been helping people in criminal cases, which I can tell you a bit about. And we've been having fantastic success with no case to answer, with no barristers, where people are representing themselves. They've got a certain amount of coaching and strategy from the sidelines, but if people are confident enough to represent themselves, they can bring this to the court's attention straight away. And then you're asking the judge's assistance at this point when you're in the Crown Court, because you want his assistance as a litigant or as a self-representative. You need his assistance, and then all of a sudden the judge is batting for you, because he's come to the crease. You're representing yourself in a Crown Court, and he's then at the crease, and the bails on top of the wickets are his career and his reputation, and because he's got to make sure he falls over himself helping you in these circumstances, and we've been having success after success with this.
So, have you got some examples? I mean, give us some examples. If we could give some real life examples.
Yes, certainly. In Nottingham, this is a case I'd like people to attend if they can on the 26th of this month. I'm helping a pensioner. She's a severely disabled lady, very poorly, and she's being charged at the moment. She's charged with allowing her premises to be used to grow cannabis. Now, this charge was originally, this lady has commercial premises, and upstairs are empty rooms and storage and like a flat facility. She's unable to get up these stairs because she's in a mobility scooter, and she's got the onset of Parkinson's disease coming on, along with loads of other issues. This lady was running her shop when the police burst in and arrested her. They arrested her because they said there was a cannabis grow going on upstairs in the premises. They went upstairs and found a cannabis grow, and they arrested her. The reality is that their belief was that her son was growing cannabis plants upstairs, and rather than getting secured evidence and sitting outside and waiting for her son, who they believed was the prime mover in this matter, to enter the premises, they decided to just go and arrest this poor old lady and use her basically as a tool to get her son to comply. So she got arrested and they couldn't find her son. When they did find her son, he didn't make any comment. He wouldn't speak. He wouldn't cooperate with the police in any way, shape, or form. So they initially charged a pair of them with cultivating cannabis in these premises. As I said, this lady, she's not able to get up a flight of stairs. She's completely disabled. But they were both charged. And the son came to me and asked me if I could help him. And his mother used the lawyers and had a barrister. Mm-hmm. At the first court hearing in the magistrate's court, I operated as a advocate for fundamental freedoms, or what they'll refer to as a Mackenzie friend, and we placed no case to answer before the court. Mm-hmm. And we made an application for no case to answer.
What was the grounds for that no case to answer?
Well, there was no case to answer. There was nothing to suggest that this son was involved in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I mean, if this cannabis farm has been found in her property, in her premises,
yeah,
surely then there is a case to answer.
Well, not against him, not unless they found him in the premises, or not unless there was some circumstantial evidence to suggest. I mean, otherwise, anyone who's related to anybody would be whipped in for a crime.
Yeah, sorry, I was under a misapprehension. Go on, no, carry on.
Yeah, no, fine, Jason, that's fine. I mean, that's why it's best to examine these things and to air it all out. So I I sat with the son on the first hearing we went to. The barrister for his mother, now she was paying money into legal aid for this assistance as well. And the barrister for the mother entered a plea for her of not guilty. And we stated no case to answer. Now, they tried to bully the lad into making a plea, which he wouldn't and refused. So the court said they would enter a plea, so we said, fine, carry on. We then had a case conference with the barrister for his mother, and I was quite upset with him because I said he was professionally negligent. They were charged with cultivation of cannabis.
So sorry, did you say that they entered a plea on his behalf?
They said they would enter a plea on his behalf.
But surely that is taking somebody's power of attorney without consent.
Exactly, and it never happened. That was just the clerk of the court trying to bully him.
Right, okay. We're just outlining the tactics. Sorry.
Yeah. So we then had a case conference immediately after, and with the barrister, with his mother, and with the family, and in a room, and I accused the barrister of professional negligence. I said that he's professionally negligent, coercing his client into making a plea in a false dilemma. She couldn't possibly have committed the crime because she wasn't physically able to get up a flight of stairs. He took his wig off and his shoes off and sat on the table at that point in the room, for any relevance that had. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they took it on board to that extent, and the next hearing, it was a different barrister this time, but he said that he was making an application of no case to answer on her behalf now, because she wasn't physically capable of committing the crime that she's charged with.
Right. So, but I thought the charge was allowing cultivation of cannabis.
First of all, it was cultivation.
Right. Okay. So which is what you were talking about, weren't it?
Yeah.
They overcharge. They go for cultivation.
Yeah.
And then they try to downgrade it to it probably be, if she were convicted, it would be allowing cultivation.
Well, now this is where it gets interesting, because the initial charge of cultivation, when we entered the courtroom the next time, the CPS had dropped the charge on both of them, because they were jointly charged, to allowing the place to be used. So it came down from cultivation to allowing the place to be used.
Right. So in order to, because obviously there was no case to answer with the cultivation of cannabis, because there was no evidence against either party really. The only evidence was the fact that they'd found these cannabis plants in this building.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we go back to the second hearing, and they've dropped the charge down to allowing the place to be used. So there was a date set for the next hearing, and the next hearing was to be in front of, unbelievably, Godsmark QC, who was the one who's dealt with all Tom's cases. But we're now in the criminal court. So they wanted a defence statement of the son, because at this point I'm working with the son, I'm not working with the mother. So we made a defence statement, and our defence statement was that there was no case to answer, because we don't have to make a defence statement anyway. We're not obliged to do anything. But we made a defence statement that there was no case to answer. And in front of Godsmark agreed that the application should be heard, and that it should be aired before the courts to establish if there was a case to answer, because clearly there wasn't in this case of the son. And the case got adjourned. The barrister for the mother at this point was bullying her. And I don't say this lightly. They were trying to tell her to plead guilty. She could not possibly be not guilty, and were trying to coerce her into a plea. There was quite a scene in Nottingham Crown Court between me and the barrister and the solicitor who was with the barrister, and it got very heated. Which in itself is outrageous, really. I mean, this is somebody that's supposed to be there to assist somebody, to assist a person, when it's clearly she's not guilty of what's been put before her, and yet the barristers are still telling her to plead guilty. That's right. So at the end of that, because she paid, and bless her, foolishly she paid out money she couldn't afford to supplement the legal aid in this matter. And, she's a very, proud lady, and she was trying to contribute. But so she sacked her barrister and asked me to help her, because she felt she'd completely lost confidence in them. They only turned up on the morning of the trial. She didn't know who a barrister was until, and I've now spoken to 2 different barristers representing her and 2 different solicitors' clerks representing, paralegals representing her. And she wasn't getting any assistance off them. And she said, I've already handed you hundreds of pounds, and so I want to sack you. I want a guy to help me at this point. So we then had the next hearing, after Godsmark had said that there should be an application listened to for no case to answer. And we came before a judge, Sifrit, a very, very good judge, just dealing with procedural elements. Very good indeed. And we went before him, and the CPS had said that they'd made a narrative for the case. They said that there was this going on. They said that there was fingerprints on light bulb upstairs on this grow, and on a can of Red Bull. And of course, when it came to the hearing for the no case to answer for the son, we had said, okay, whose fingerprints are they? And it turned out they weren't either the son or the mother's. They're completely different. So we went in and we had the hearing. So I sat in between the mother and the son. Now, the mother's in court on a mobility scooter, and she's got the onset of Parkinson's. She's shaking and crying. She's 70 years of age. She's paid into a system all her life, and this is what I said to the judge. The judge allowed me to speak. I said, I'm the only one who can assist you here, because she can't communicate with you because she's so upset. And I said, this lady's a victim of everybody here, surely. I said, she's paid into a system all her life, into a service, court and tribunal service, and it's been found failing. Under the Consumer Rights Act, it's failing. It's a service. I said, she's paid into all her life, and when she's needed it, for the first time in 70 years, when she's needed it, it's not there for her. She's had to physically be paying cash into that as well. So the judge he was very good. He said, okay, well, let's hear if there is a case to answer. So the CPS laid their case out. So of course, the judge at this point is having to assist us because we're saying the evidence as it stands is not prima facie. At this point, the CPS try arguing their case, saying one of their references was that the equipment was so heavy upstairs, it would have taken 2 people to go up the stairs. And of course, we're saying, well, the lady on the scooter certainly wasn't one of them. And they're saying that the fingerprint evidence doesn't establish anyone. And in fact, the only reason that the son was there was because he was her son. He wasn't physically found in the building. They have no evidence to suggest he was physically anywhere near the building. They have no forensic evidence. He had not spoken to the police in any way, shape, or form. They had nothing. And the judge completely agreed with our application and said there was no case to answer. The prosecutor was fighting tooth and nail on his feet to try and stop this, and the judge said it doesn't matter what narrative you wish to place on the evidence, it cannot be established that there is a case. The people of reasonable standards would think there was a case to answer. The case against the son is gone. So that case then, now when there is no case to answer, people have got to realise that doesn't mean you've been found not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
What it means is that you could walk out of the building, they could later find another piece of evidence, and wrap it all up again and throw it back at you. So that's exactly what Section 116 commitments were all about. You could walk out, but you weren't out of the woods, as far as you weren't found not guilty.
Yeah, but they have been told that they need evidence.
But they need evidence, yes, and they can't continue with that evidence. So there would have to be additional supporting evidence. So at that point, the son was then out of the situation. I won't say what happened next because I might get the judge in trouble, and he's a very good judge. But he basically said that he wanted this matter gone and was trying to look for a remedy to sort it. But of course, the mother was so upset and so distressed. She was not pleading guilty to anything because she doesn't know anything about what's going on. So they said, okay, do you realise that you're not represented? And she said, I don't trust anyone but Guy. And she was shaking and obviously an emotional wreck. The lady's never been. She's a devout Christian. She's never been in trouble in her life. I mean, it's a nonsense. So the judge said, listen to the CPS. I'm going to tell you to go away and to reflect whether this is in the public's interest, whether this matter should even be here for what's going on. So you must go away and reflect. And when they say that to go away and reflect, that's a wonderful sign because everything is a reflection, and that's what they're trying to. They're telling the CPS what to do, really. Because they wouldn't be happy running the case.
Yeah, what they're basically saying is to the CPS is go away and reflect because we don't think that this is the best way to run this case.
Exactly. And I mean, this is why people like Lord Janner got off, for God's sake. Yeah?
Mm. Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, look, at the end, what on earth are they going to establish by continuing this? But the son's gone, and it's just the mother. So they said they would go away and reflect. I said to them that we'd be prepared to, assist them if they need anything off us. And another hearing date was set. When we turned up at the next hearing date in Nottingham Crown Court, I was very fortunate. I've been on other cases in the building since then, criminal cases, and they gave me audience straight away. They obviously had case notes regarding the lady's ill health. And we had a judge called Judge Dickinson, who again was a very good judge, operating only on procedure. I said that this lady is purely a victim of these matters. If the prosecution's original narrative was correct, so if we hypothetically think it was correct, which it wasn't, then she would be a victim of her son. She's a victim of the court service, which is failing to support her after paying into it since she left school. Mm-hmm. And she's a victim of the CPS maliciously prosecuting when they've been asked to reflect. And this judge sort of didn't want me grandstanding on this sort of stuff, but closed me down to a certain extent and said, okay, listen, I agree to the point where this matter needs to be reflected on. So I'm telling you to go away and reflect, he said to the CPS. And the CPS said, yes, okay. And I said, listen, if she's been a victim of her son, and I knew that the judge was thinking, yeah, well, the son's not here anymore, if that was the case. And of course, that's what the case was. You know, if that's what the original narrative was, they're just victimising the his mother.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there was no evidence to support that. You know, he could have had 10 brothers and sisters all around the world, and they would have all equally been guilty in those circumstances. That's why people shouldn't speak to the police when they get arrested at all, right? But anyway, for any reason. But anyway, so we move on to that case. So I at that point, I then gave the CPS all her medical notes, all the side effects of her drugs, and I gave them a huge bundle. Now, at this point, the CPS had the opportunity to bail themselves out of this predicament, to show humanity that obviously, they should have backed off. But they said that they would reflect, and I was then in communication with the CPS, and I have been since that time. I said, listen, this lady's, elderly. She's got the onset of Parkinson's. She's very ill, and she doesn't want this hanging over her head. So please come up with an answer. And I managed to get them to agree. And within about 2 or 3 week period, we had a date when they were going to give us the answer, whether it was in the public's interest. And the answer came through. They were going to continue. So
Unbelievable.
Now, I mean, taking into account that on was it Friday that there was an article in the Mail from a judge saying prosecuting lawyers are lacking brain cells and don't understand criminal trials. Blast.
Yeah, I think I read that. I think I saw that anyway. I saw the headline anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I think it is that they're all working together, these parties, and they all notify each other of what the legal arguments are going to be, etc., etc. And they don't have trials. They're plea bargaining most of this stuff away. So I think what's happening is they're starting to not realise the basic fundamentals of getting the process off the ground. And identity and that there is a case to answer are two of the most essential ingredients in any criminal trial. So, finish off with this. This lady's now up on the 26th. And of course, we've tried to do this without publicity, really, because, but the point is, the public need to come there and to support her, and to show that, hang on, we're watching this situation. I mean, what I've given you there, I mean, at the end of this, I don't think, I don't think that the case is going to get off the ground. I'm going to be making an application for audience because these are exceptional circumstances. She's got no confidence, she's got no faith or confidence in the legal profession, so it's going to have to be me there. She's not going to be able to cross-examine any witnesses, and the whole narrative has now been twisted. I mean, they used her as a pawn to get to the son, that didn't work, and now they're still deciding to flog her. So I'd appreciate personally anyone's support. Come to Nottingham Crown Court 3 on the 26th of this month, and just see what's really going on there. So,
well,
and I mean,
why don't you use this opportunity? I mean, what time is the case on?
It's on at 10:30 in Court 3.
Right. So, how about you sort of like get a rendezvous point for anybody that might want to come and support? Perhaps there's a local Wetherspoons around the corner, if I remember rightly, at Nottingham. Perhaps get people to rendezvous there an hour before, so that they can all be filled in on what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, great. That's great, Jason. And yeah, I'll confirm that with you. Yeah, an hour before, Wetherspoons around the corner. If anyone wants to come and support, it'd be really much appreciated. And we will, let's show these people that we're watching them. And I've said this, and in all fairness to the judges, because this is the point, right? When you're in the civil realm, the judges make it up as they go along. When you're in the criminal realm, the standard of evidence is far, far higher. And what I was saying about the judge batting for you, when you're representing yourself, then he's got to assist you on these points of law because you're a lay person when it enters areas of law. But if you know these areas regarding identification and whether there is actually a case to answer, it's the most fundamental elements to address. And you operate in there with confidence. They're more frightened of jurors than we are. Because at the end of the day, if this matter goes before the jury and it does go through the process on the trial date, it's been put down for 3 days. The prosecution evidence, well, after we've examined the prosecution evidence, of course, I'm not saying this at this stage, but we may just very much, after offering a case of no case to answer, if the judge is brave enough to allow it to go to the jury, we may offer no defence to the jury. I say, members of the jury, you've heard this. This is nonsense. These people aren't reasonable people. The CPS have been offered the opportunity to bail out of this on numerous occasions, and they haven't. The judge has allowed this to go through to you, people of reasonable standards. This isn't a case of reasonable standards. And we ask you to find this lady not guilty. And if the jury come out, an unrepresented defendant has managed to establish that, then of course it's going to cause an awful lot of problems. And so the judge has got to be on their best behaviour and work for you in these circumstances. And I say that as a man who's had 37 years inside the courts, and in the criminal courts. This is why it's always been a shock to me when I was engaged in the civil courts, just how crooked they are, the civil courts, because the criminal courts, maybe they're not straight as a die, but they have to operate to certain standards, and so that's why we know we can hold them to account in the criminal courts. So if anyone can come down there, and like you said, Jason, thank you for that. An hour before, that would be fantastic. And hopefully we'll get plenty of support. And, let's put these people on guard that the public will watch them. And, of course, so that's the example. You asked for an example, and hopefully I've given you one there that's of some benefit, yeah?
Yeah, mm-hmm. So what I'm just thinking about sort of getting some people together to come down and support you. So if we perhaps get Ceylon or somebody to post something on Get Out of Debt Free, of a specific place and a time about an hour before, just for people to go and show the support. I know that it does have a huge impact on these judges when they know that there's people outside that are waiting on these, on what's happening.
The reverberations can be physically be felt inside the court when you've got an audience in there, and that's why we've been very quiet on this. Apart from myself and Lee Ravenscroft and Peter Kroll and people, we haven't had big amounts of crowds in the court because we just wanted them to do the right thing. When the son's case was dismissed, we thought, hang on, come on, don't take the mickey now. But that's all they've done, and bless her, the lady who's involved in this, she's had the last 2-3 months of still had the worry on her shoulders, and it's ridiculous. And so let's get the public and support it. So and thanks for that again. Let's make that arrangement an hour before. And like you say, I'll certainly ask Mark and or any other guys to promote it. And so great stuff. So I would just use that as an example of which I can use. That isn't my case. That's the example, and hopefully that's been of some use to people.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you for that, Guy. We have got a couple of questions coming from the chat room, and they're asking if Tom's coming back on, and also what date is Tom's court case, and can they attend and give support for Tom when he's in court next?
Is Tom around?
You still there, Tom?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, we can hear you, mate.
Yeah. It's on the 14th at 9:45, Magistrates Court, Nottingham. And just to reinforce what Guy was saying, Guy was in court in Wales. I got into court earlier and listened to a case where these two were up for burglary. One pleaded not guilty, and the other one, his barrister, pleaded no case to answer. The guy who pleaded went to jail, and the guy who pleaded no case to answer walked out of the court. It does work, and that's the same with my son and Mark and Betty and Henry at the Rooftop 6. They pleaded no case to answer as well. And the judge was blowing hot and cold, and they were forced to drop the case because they couldn't produce a verified warrant. They tried to get the court clerk, not the court clerk, the manager of the filing to verify it. The idiot put his name to it, but they couldn't find one judge in Nottingham to do that. So no case to answer. It's a great route to go down, and we're having great success in the criminal, and the only other criminals are the county courts.
That's great news, Tom. So you said the 14th. Is that the 14th of this month, Tom?
It's a couple of days' time.
Oh, yeah, day
Thursday.
after tomorrow.
Bastille Day.
It's what?
Bastille Day.
I'm sharpening my guillotine right now.
I think you should be.
It's I'm really excited. We got a lot going on as well. We've got, if I could give a shout out for anybody that's been evicted, we've got an evictees meeting in Nottingham. That's on the 16th. Come along. It's a private meeting. Contact us on Facebook, because it's not going to be a talking shop, this one. It's going to be actions. So we're getting real good support there. But anyone who needs help, and don't give up against these people.
No, and also, I think it's important for people to understand that if they don't really see anything from you, on social media and things like that, it doesn't mean to say that things aren't happening. Because as we know, you play your cards a little closer to your chest these days, because wearing your heart on your sleeve just had a terrible outcome.
Well, I don't know about that. I thought the outcome to come was predictable. They were going to send huge forces to remove us. We're not fools. We understood that we will not back down from these criminals. But what
I'm trying to say is
brilliant.
Because of what you posted on social media, that gave them the opportunity.
Oh, yeah, when I went down. But they'd already been monitoring. They would have known whether I put on social. The police already admitted that they hacked my phone. They intercepted our landline. We asked for the bill for a month. Now, the inspector admitted to me that certain laws are allowed to do it. They must classify me as a terrorist. So, yeah, shocking, really.
That is quite shocking. Someone who's trying to bring the justice system into line is set upon by the laws if they were a terrorist. I mean, that really says a great deal about the country that we're living in these days, doesn't it?
They brought these laws in so they could do this against the people. I mean, I think it was last November, the May Treaty, when that was signed in Europe, and more than 2 or 3 in a meeting are classified as terrorists, and they can come in and arrest you, and you can be held indefinitely.
Unbelievable! This noose that we've allowed them to wrap around his necks.
Well, if we look at anything that's called a strategic partnership, we got to inquire as to what the strategy is all about, and the strategy is all about one purpose on their behalf. And so, when I see strategic partnerships, all these courts and these councils and these schools, they're all in strategic partnerships with each other. So there's a conflict of interest when you go before the court, because the court's in strategic partnership. And if you look at a lot of their letter-headed stuff, you'll see that who they're in strategic partnership with. And you'll see that the courts, the council, and the schools are all in strategic partnerships with each other. And if we look at these strategic partnerships at the highest level, in the banks and in the government, as being cartels, And in the lower levels, we look at them as being gangs or cults in some circumstances, with cultish behaviour. But ultimately, we're operating inside a vast criminal conspiracy, and it's beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And the only thing that I know that they're frightened of is the law, and the law is 12 of our peers, not a judge, 12 people of reasonable standards, and that's what a jury is supposed to be. And even if they've got, I've heard of jurors being tampered with, where they've got a couple of ex-police or ex-military in the jury trying to swing the jury. But of course, you've only got to have 3 people in that jury who agree with you, and it's a hung jury. So they'd have to have 9 in there, which they wouldn't be able to get reasonably, I don't think, even at this moment. So jury is what we want, and real courts is what we want. And like I say,
that's what we want, Guy.
Yeah.
Speaking, he said you're a clever man, because when you've got 12 men and women that don't and haven't been corrupted by the system of the judiciary, it's in your favour. So that's where we should be standing. And old common law, we insist on it bringing back, and we got to find the acts and statutes to force them into this situation, and don't climb on roofs to anyone.
Well, yes, absolutely. Well, Lee's just posted something in the chat room there, and he's particularly about the Terrorism Act 2000. He said if you read the very definition of terrorism in the Terrorism Act 2000, the very people in Parliament could easily fit that definition. And he says, he adds that apparently a digital audio recording device is now deemed a terrorist device to healthcare professionals. It threatens them.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I mean, we know who the terrorists are now, surely. I mean, I keep saying to people, if you know someone who hasn't woken up yet, then go and check their pulse. Because, if people have got to have woken up to this by now, surely to God. It is every day in every way and at every level seeping down through the whole system. You see the corruption, even the infighting in this bullshit infighting in these parties, who are party whips. And I mean, these people aren't characters that you want any involvement with in life. They don't think like us. They don't think in our terms. And, the whole system's broken and collapsing. And if people aren't seeing that, and we've still got statists supporting the system, then they're either complete clowns or they're completely deluded. Yeah, there's nothing else for it. At the end of the day, the system's gone, the system's bust, and what we're trying to do in our small way is chip away at the bricks that we're involved in, and everybody does the same. People are involved in fracking, people are involved in anti-vaccines, fluoridation, every sort of GMO, every sort of area, chemtrails. All this conspiracy stuff has turned out to be correct to anyone who does their research, and we're all chipping away at the same wall, the same dam, and all thinking that that it's got to collapse sooner or later. But we've seen the cracks, we see the stuff seeping through, and we just all got to realise we're all on the same page in this. This is, if the system was correct, then it could take examination. It could take people examining documents, examining the process, examining the procedure. But of course, we know it can't. And because upon examination, then it shows that the system has no merit. And so we've got to all stick together. We've all got to keep chipping away at our little bricks. And I don't know what's going to happen when it does bust, but it's coming.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot better than we imagine. I really do. I think that people are now seeing the bullshit for what it is. You get these. You've got the Labour Party, which is now the Blairites, or the common purpose type people. They are in a minority. They found themselves in a minority, and they're trying all sorts of different ways to try and get rid of Jeremy Corbyn. And the fact that he's not leaving is I think indicative of the way that we are now standing up. We are realising we're more than they are. That there are more of us than there are them, and that the whole thing is going to come down. It's got to come down.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other outcome. It's got to collapse.
It's only with people coming together, like the good people that came to my 2 non-evictions, that shows the general public, because the general public started asking questions. We still go out in the streets, go shopping, always asking how things are, what's happening. It's only when we all come together and we start, never mind chipping at the wall there, guy, let's all get behind it and push it over. That's what we need. We need to all get together.
Yeah, I mean, look. What was exposed at Tom's place was, let's have a look. That when loads of people come together, the bailiff bullies don't show up or don't want to fight, and then we stand there and we say, well, okay, if you've got the correct paperwork, you come and give it to us, and we'll give you the keys. And they don't come with the correct paperwork. They don't come with any paperwork, and the police support this, but they don't get involved. Now, the police should be asking questions. Hang on, if this guy's in contempt of a court order, just go and arrest him for contempt of court. You don't need to get hundreds of police and helicopters and all that. You just arrest him for contempt of court. But of course, that doesn't happen. And in fact, then when you question, at first they came with fake paperwork, and then they came with no paperwork. And now we can see what's going on over in Ireland, where they're going around balaclavaed up, with their number plates covered up, and the police are supporting them actions. I mean, this is what's going on. And you're either with this corrupt system or you're not. And I think our numbers are growing by the minute, and I think they're growing by the minute. Every day I get calls of people who are straight people, normal people, business people, not involved, and all of a sudden the system's coming for them, and it's because they've asked questions. So what they've done with this free man on the land stuff, which a lot of people I know don't use any of the free man stuff anyway, because we know that they just ignore it. So they've started using the rules and regulations against them, their very own rules and regulations, which they're obligated to uphold. And we found that they can't support any merit in their actions with any paperwork. And if there's a criminal case, if a civil case, like with the rooftop crew, turns into a criminal case, there is no one on God's earth will stand in the dock, swear on the Bible, right, and say that the paperwork is correct, because they know damn well it's not. And that's what we've been trying to establish in our little way, and what has been established. And from this now, anyone who even questions their water rates over something, they're flagging up anyone who's asking questions. And every day now we're getting calls off people who've not been involved in anything, but now have found themselves bombarded, not with bombs, but with brown envelopes from people saying that certain the council tax should have been more, and they're getting pressure off the mortgage company saying that they want their mortgages paid in full, even though they're not behind with payments. So we're getting all this stuff, and it's because they're throwing the kitchen sink at it. You know what I mean? They've lost the game, and people have got to recognise this.
Mm-hmm. Guy, that makes a change for them to get the brown envelopes instead of the judges.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely, Tom. Thanks, you guys. It's been a fascinating first hour, and it's absolutely flown by. This time we normally play a little tune. So in view of what we've been talking about in the first half, I thought...
Is it the bailiff's one?
A little, no. I just thought I'd be a bit less predictable. I thought we'd have a bit of Bob Marley. So we'll be back in about 5.5 minutes, folks. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Andrew K. Fletcher, originator of incline bed therapy, talking to you on Raconteurs News.
And welcome back to Raconteurs News. This grey, dull, cold Tuesday evening, isn't it? It's not a Wednesday or a Thursday. Tuesday evening. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jason Young, but tonight we've got
Jason Young.
Jason Young. Yeah. Oh, you can be young, Jason.
I'm not. Definitely not Jason Young. But I do want to ask you, because the burning issue tonight is fish.
Fish, yeah.
So, what's your favourite fish, Andy? Andy Holmes.
Yes, my favourite fish is cod.
Oh, you see, I'm a haddock man. I don't believe in cod. All right, let's get back to it then.
Yeah, so welcome back, Guy and Tom. Good evening, guys. Are you both back?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we're both here.
Well, Guy said he was going to go on to talk about his own case, but we just got a kind of double barrel question from Hello in the chat room, and the first part of that is referring to Tom and his evictees thing and wake up project. Can you just run over the details of that again, Tom, or did you want to leave that till the end? It's up to you.
No, I'll run over that. The evictees, we've put a shout out about 2-3 weeks ago for anyone that's lost their home, and it's only for evictees. To contact them at either my Facebook page, Tom Crawford, or Evictees and Families Unite. That's another one, and then my usual one, which is the eviction fraud of the bank. Any one of that three, and we'll point you in the right direction. But you've only got a few days before it happens. But you've got to take along your documents that say who you are, because we're trying to keep it nice and quiet because the baddies. And then the Wake Up Project is, as it says, it's the Wake Up Project UK. We're travelling the country. We've got a meeting down on the 23rd at the Hive in Dalston. That starts at 11 o'clock. We've got some great speakers there. And we're getting into the universities because they're the future. Well, hopefully they'll be awake before we get halfway through them. But once we wake them up, because you know what, I really don't know what will happen to our youngsters. Years ago, they used to be very active, but now they seem very subdued. Whether it's the fluoride in the water, I really don't know. But we're there.
I think it's their education system, to be honest, Tom. I think it's the education system that makes them feel as though if they step outside of the dogmatic norms that they're taught, then they're some kind of freak. And you know what kids are like? They don't want to stand out in a crowd, do they? They want to sort of just blend in and not really and have a quiet life. I think that's what it is. The education system is at fault for that.
There's down there. They're called the group. They want us to speak there as well. But it's not only that. Because of this debt society we're in, they've put our youngsters into debt to be educated. And they've also got a fear of get these grants if they make too much noise, maybe. I really don't know. But they're in serious debt before they even start working. You know, it's a vile situation that everyone finds themselves in. And it goes right from stealing our children, stealing our money, stealing our homes, stealing our thoughts. You know, it's shocking.
It's fear as well, isn't it, Tom? It's fear. That's what it is. I mean, people are fearful of. We're in a society where there are so many people that have not got anything, that anybody that's got anything is in fear of losing it, and simply because of the vicious system that we seem to live in under.
Yeah, well, this country, the power is the fear. That's what they've got. Once you lose that fear, the stuff myself and my family have gone through, we lost that a long time ago. These people don't scare us. But ordinary men and women in the street fear about losing their 46-inch television, let alone their home, and they'll toe the line. And that's where those statists come in. They are backing it all up. They're almost like during 1938, 39, before the war, where they got the children to spy on their families, and then they started getting to spy on their neighbours. And the same in Russia. We're in that situation here. We've got groups of people out there that will do anything to keep this system going, and we got to pull these people up as fast as we can. We can't let those people, because they are putting trouble within all the groups that's trying to do good. They're knocking everyone where possible. And you mentioned the Labour leader. They're attacking him right now. Whether he's a good man or bad man, I don't care. You shouldn't attack people. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well,
sorry, do you still get people trolling you? I know you had a problem with a guy. Do you think that people don't have the compulsion to, if they don't agree with something, scroll past it? That's simple, isn't it? And you've had trouble with trolls and things like that. And what's that situation like? I mean, do you still get people that are constantly on your case?
Oh, constantly. Not just me. Everyone that has a voice out there, whether I've got a voice or not. It's only you lads that give us these voices. But yeah, under attack all the time. But that last troll, he thought he's been smart, took us to court for something absolutely ridiculous. Now he's ended up in the dock. I've had him up for a committal hearing, and that's the way to do it. Don't give them your energy. He wasted a lot of my energy, which I needed at the time. That's what it was all about, to keep me busy. And I've got better things to do than worry about trolls. So I laugh at them now.
Well, that's a fantastic way to look at things. You don't give these people your energy because that's what they're after. That's what they're draining you of. They're draining you of the energy so that you can't continue what's really what you want to be doing.
Yeah,
guys had the same.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know you're over the target when you start taking flack. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's great. That's what you expect, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm.
Well, why would people be so obsessed with time? And spend hours watching stuff to do. Either it's an obsession or they're working for other reasons. And there's no other explanation. As you've said, Jason, you just move on, don't you? If you don't agree with something, you move on, and as simple as that. I mean, fear is caused by an addiction to the material. So, I mean, and we're all guilty of that. I mean, we had Buddha. So, and as I say, most people think it's not going to happen to them. It's only when it starts knocking on their door that they start realising. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, I think there's enough people waking up at enough rapid rate of knots at the moment to something's going to happen. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the second half of the show, you were going to tell us all about your recent court case, Guy. Would you like to give us a rundown of that?
Yeah, well, right, okay. Well, I mean, it's quite lengthy, but it's quite interesting, right, if you're interested, anyway. I was arrested in March. Coppers surrounded the house, said, get out. I said, have you got a warrant? I was in the back of the conservatory. Had 8 coppers. I refused to leave. They said they kicked the doors in, wouldn't show me a warrant under their own rules, under section 13.5 of the criminal procedure rules. They've got to show me the warrant. So anyway, they arrested me, took me to the police station, and they said for breach of bail. Well, I said, well, I'm not on bail. I've not been arrested, interviewed, charged. I don't know what you're talking about. But they took me down to the police station anyway. Cut a long story short, they kept me all night and told me that I'd be put in Welshpool Magistrates Court, where I failed to surrender the bail in the January. So now this is March, but they're telling me that I should have appeared in court in the January in Welshpool. So I said, fine, what for? They couldn't tell me. I then got transported in the morning all the way over to Aberystwyth, because for some reason the venue had changed from Welshpool. And when I got to Aberystwyth, again, I was in custody for a total of 20 hours. I said, I've got no papers, I don't know what you're talking about. They said the summons has been sent through the post. I said, it's a summons I haven't received. And of course, I get legal mail coming through here all day, every day. So anyway, they adjourned the case. The clerk of the court at that hearing, they said that it was an unimprisonable offence, so they were giving me bail, unconditional bail. I explained that I knew nothing of it. They said the CPS had to produce the case papers by the 28th of March for a trial on the 14th. So all fair and well. I then waited for the case papers to come through. On the 28th, nothing happened. So when I turned up in court on the 14th, on unconditional bail in Aberystwyth, I was saying there was no case to answer. Again, I didn't know what I was supposed to be defending. I had received a couple of pieces of paper while in the court through the duty solicitor, who I'd said just to find out any information, and they were saying that I had been involved in quite a large scene in Welshpool Magistrates Court the previous July. So the timeline is, they're saying that something happened in Welshpool Magistrates in July, and that I had to go to court in January, and then in March I'm arrested for not turning up in January. And then in April, I've turned up for the trial, still not having received any disclosure documents, so still not knowing what I'm supposed to be defending.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this in our the last time you were on the show. So if anybody wants to get some background on that, if you go on our podcast page on raconteursnews.com, there's a podcasts section as well, and you'll find there's a couple of shows that Guy's been on, and you outlined some background to the case then, didn't you? So, yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, nice, Jason. So when I entered the court, of course, it was just me and Linda. We'd set off at 6 in the morning to get to all the way to Aberystwyth. I haven't been to Aberystwyth prior to all this since I was 14. We turn up in court, and of course, there's only us up all day. There was another case because a Polish lad got done for stabbing, and the court's in a very strange sort of situation. They got all those people in the court, security, but we got ushered straight in. We were the only case being heard that day. And of course, the next thing is the clerk was trying to bully me into pleading guilty or not guilty. Again, like I say, creating a false dilemma. Now, at the previous hearing, I'd said that there was no case to answer and that I'd be questioning the identity because I didn't know anything about what was going on.
So what was the charge, Guy? What was the actual charge that they were putting before you?
Section 5. Yes, Section 5, public order, which means if you break wind in front of a police officer, you could technically be arrested for it.
We all know about Section 5, yeah. Everybody's, I think, at some point, has been on the end of Section 5.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have, haven't you? That's probably you. So anyway, next thing is this clerk starts getting on his high horse. And funny enough, you're talking about fish, yeah? Which is your favourite fish? Well, his name was Cray. And when I took his name, I said Cray with an A, because I knew Cray with a C, because I knew it would be as in crayfish, a bottom-feeding creature, because he was just acting completely outrageous, yeah? Bottom-feeding crustacean. So he gets the award for that. So he calls the scene with me, and the next thing is the courtroom surrounded by police. There's only me and Linda there. Courtroom surrounded by police. I'm locked in the glass cubicle, but there's no security staff to open the doors. They wouldn't give me a drink. It went on for 45 minutes, and then the police arrested me, which again caused controversy because if they arrested me, then I had to be given the opportunity to explain my actions. And the clerk of the court was saying, no, he's been held in contempt, not being arrested. So anyway, but I was taken to the police station. Police were perfectly good chaps that day. They didn't even put me in a cell. They sat around talking to me and making me tea until we got a phone call from the court saying that to bring me back, I'd been found guilty in my absence because I'd failed to attend. The police thought this was outrageous, but took me back. So when they took me back to the court, they said that they found me guilty in my absence and fined me and whatever. And they said you're being put up for contempt. So of course, I ended up getting 7 days for contempt. Simple as that. Really and truthfully, which they said I was in contempt. I said, well, it wasn't even a court, so I couldn't be in contempt. But I was given 7 days, so I went off to Swansea Prison. And then I was taken out of Swansea Prison, or let out of Swansea Prison after 3 days. And it was very interesting because while I was in there, people went straight to the clerk of the court, his Facebook page, and found out that he was involved in all these sort of dogging sites around Pembrokeshire, and that also he'd written on his Facebook page, he was a proper candidate for common purpose, because he's trying to lead beyond authority, which is what was going on in the court that day. And he'd written on his Facebook page that David Cameron and the Tories should be culled, and someone had screenshotted it. So we had all that information.
We're talking about the clerk of the court that has brought this exacerbated this charge against you, this of contempt of court, when it wasn't actually really a court. And we find out that he's a member of some dogging society.
Yeah.
There might be people that don't know what dogging is. Can you explain?
Having sex in lay-bys with strangers.
Right, okay. So I just wanted to make clear for anybody that's listening that this is what this guy was into, and he was instrumental in having you locked up for alleged contempt of court.
Yes,
in your absence.
Because you see, because he wouldn't let me speak, I did call him a clown. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's a circus. It was a circus in there, and he thought he was the ringmaster. But I discovered that the ringmaster was really a clown because he wasn't operating procedurally correct, and he was hindering my access to the constitutionally established courts. If you go to contempt of court in Archbold and discover what contempt of court is, you discover it's wholly the creature of the common law, and the most clear and important ruling you come to is Lord Diplock. And Lord Diplock clearly states that the administration of justice requires first the unhindered access to the constitutionally established courts. And he was hindering, if it wasn't a court, and I wasn't consenting it to be in a court, but if I did consent to it being a court, he was in contempt of it. And yet I was found guilty of contempt and of some description, which is still ongoing, and I was then sent to Swansea Prison. When I went to Swansea Prison, the Swansea governor was very good. He came up, shook my hand and said, load of nonsense, you'll be out on Thursday. I said, am I a civilian prisoner at the reception desk? And they said, yes. They said, oh, that's interesting. And they went, oh, yes, you're a civilian. Oh, thanks. Great. So I spent 3 days in there, chatting with people in there and telling them basically about what was going on. And it was great. To be honest with you, it was 3 days of reflection on what had happened and how we were going to attack it when I got out. So when I came out, I appealed. And, of course, there had been lots of problems for the clerk, I knew, because of what his Facebook site contained. And I'd been on the UK column explaining all this. And, of course, Brian and Mike on the UK column were the ones who'd come across all the information. So, anyway, we had an appeal arranged then for the June, I think it was the early part of June. Early part of June, wasn't it? Yes. End of May, beginning of June. Okay, so we then had an appeal, and I appealed against the conviction, Section 5. Now, the thing is, appealing against Section 5 committal is like saying that you've never farted. It's usually not much good, but I thought, great, let's get this up, because they're saying they found me guilty in my absence, and overwhelming evidence. And the overwhelming evidence was that in Welshpool Court back in the previous July, that a solicitor and a solicitor for a claimant and a solicitor for the council had been having a conversation, and they claimed that I had interrupted the conversation, started abusing them. The court security came over and escorted me out, I was threatening, I'll kill you, and started doing kung fu moves and doing kung fu style kicking and out in the public, out on the steps. And all three of these people had written statements to that effect. Now, taking into account I'd never been arrested, interviewed, charged, cautioned, or bailed for this offence, I found this very interesting that I'd been found guilty in my absence. Based on what? And by this time, I still had not received any documentation to examine, even though the appeal was coming up. So anyway, I communicated with them, got the documents, and they gave me a big bundle. Not big bundle, it was about an inch thick. But 3/4 of that inch was my previous antecedents and my history. So when I separated that from the trial bundle, I could see that there were in fact 4 statements. But the first statement was from a police officer who claimed to have made a phone call to my house in December. But of course that wasn't evidence because he couldn't identify me. So I had that pruned from the bundle. And the other 3 were the statements from the 2 solicitors and from the court security. Now, my only sort of interpretation as to what's going on here, I do a lot of stuff in Wales, is people were trying to get me stopped from appearing in the court somehow. That's what it appeared to be. But anyway, I then went to the appeal hearing, and the judge said the CPS were very good at this hearing, and they said the judge wants to see you before the case begins. So I said, well, I want to see him before the case begins, because of course there's a judge and 2 magistrates you appeal the decision to a judge and 2 magistrates in the Crown Court. The situation being that the magistrates are supposed to be 2 lay people, sat with a judge who's supposed to be given directions in the law. And so I went and saw the judge without the magistrates. And he said, we didn't quite understand whether you wanted to appeal the contempt issue as well. I said, well, I hadn't planned on it at this point because obviously if I get acquitted of the charge, then as far as I'm concerned, the contempt didn't ever happen. Anyway, but I thought to myself, well, hang on, for this section 5, at the moment I've got the opportunity of examining 2 solicitors. One is a council solicitor to do with council tax and things on cases that have happened with people. Another solicitor and a court security guard. So I thought if I can get the additional case of the contempt, they'll have to call the CPS barrister who was there that day and the clerk of the court. So I thought, wow, I've got 5 people to cross-examine. So I thought, yeah, fair enough. I said, okay, you bring it on. Yeah, let's have a look at it then. So the case went on. So they first dealt with the Section 5, and the first witness they called. Now, remember now, I haven't been interviewed. I haven't been cautioned. And so I'm not saying that I was there. I'm not saying I wasn't there. I'm saying nothing at all. They brought the case. They have to prove the case. I've made an application that there has been an abusive process and no case to answer. So the first thing they did was call the first witness. Now, the first witness says he's a solicitor, says he was approached by a gentleman, and this gentleman started getting leery with him, blah-de-blah-de-blah. I could recognise this gentleman if asked to do so. And I said to the judge before any of the witnesses got called, there's going to be a doc identification in this case. And the judge said, no, there won't. I said, I can assure you there's going to be. There's been no official identification procedures. So the judge said, no, they called the first witness in. So the first witness came in, and the CPS were talking to him, and he was saying about this gentleman who approached him. And they said, would you recognise him again? And he looked at me and said it was him. So I jumped up and said, objection. So the judge said, no, you can't do that in a criminal court. You can't give out like a doc identification. So when it became my turn to question him, I said, I've got no questions for him. I just sat back down. Now, what him and the other solicitor and the security guard had concocted a story, and this story was so ridiculous as to be nonsense, to say I was kung fu kicking and etc. But they concocted this story, but they haven't even established that there's been an identity of me. They haven't even had an identification. They haven't even given them a book to look at. So at this point, I'm not saying I've been there. I'm not saying I'm not there. It's for them to prove. So I asked him no questions, because when people make a story up, they tend to focus on the story and not on the other facts around it. So that was what I was thinking at this time, and luckily correctly. So they called the second witness. The second witness said that he's been involved in many council tax cases involving someone he knows is called Guy Walker. Guy Walker is, he purports to act as a Mackenzie friend in council tax proceedings. Notwithstanding any entitlement to be assisted by a Mackenzie friend, Mr. Walker disregards court etiquette by arguing with the judiciary. I personally have been in several cases where Mr. Walker has addressed the court on matters that he has no legal standing. I've always found Mr. Walker to be aggressive in his dealings with the court service. Mr. Walker was in court on the 20th of July 2015. So when he came up for questioning, they said to him, would he recognise the gentleman? And he said, and he pointed to me again. And again, I said, objection, there's been a doc identification, there's been no official procedure. So when I cross-examined him, I did cross-examine him. And I said, right, I want you to start your statement on the 5th paragraph and start reading. I'm going to say to you to stop, and when I ask you to stop, I'm going to ask you questions. He said, okay. So he said, I said, read paragraph 5. So he said, on 20th July 2015. I said, stop. He said, oh, I know I've made a mistake. I put Mr. Walker instead of Mr. Taylor. It's because I know another person called Guy Walker. And I said, I'm not asking you about that. I'm asking you about the date. Right? I said, what is that date? He said, that's the date. I said, are you sure? I said, well, the other witness said it's not the date. He said, it's the 30th. He said, we'll have to check my diary. I said, well, you're the council solicitors. We pay for you to be a solicitor. And this is only 2 pages. And you're telling me that you've said Mr. Walker wrongly on 11 occasions. And you've got the date wrong on 2 occasions. So he continued. And when he continued, I said to him, right, when he said Guy Walker, he said, Stroke Taylor. I said, Stroke Taylor? It doesn't say Stroke Taylor. No, but it should be Taylor. So I just let him, I objected to the judge a couple of times, and just let him ridicule himself, really. So at the end of that, we got the first guy who hasn't been given any formal identification of anyone, says this gentleman, he recognised him again, but was never given any identification procedures. On the second one, we've got someone saying Mr. Walker on 11 occasions in a 2-page statement, and it's got the date wrong, the 20th of July, when they're trying to claim it was the 30th. So you then have the third witness, the final witness for this, who was the court security. And court security, it's quite ridiculous. He says that Mr. Taylor threatened Mr. Davis. Mr. Taylor then threatened Mr. Davis verbally by saying that he was gunning after him. Mr. Davis said he did not want to have any more conversation on the matter. Mr. Taylor moved into the waiting room for court 2 to be with his friend. Mr. Davis returned his discussion with the solicitor for the council. Blah, blah, blah. At this point, Mr. Taylor retreated into the waiting room and he said, what's the definition of a threat? You tell me what a threat is. You can. He kept saying, fucking axe. I can give you fucking axe. I'm leaving. He then went towards where Mr. Davis had been standing, so I followed him. After heading towards the front door, saying, this is nothing but a monkey court. All of you are fucking monkeys. I'm going to have you. I'm going to have you. I'm going to fucking have you, and I'm going to fucking kill you. His voice was so loud that the stream of traffic could hear him. Some even lowered their windows and watched as he waved his clenched fists and ninja kung fu style aggressive moves at us. Even with the flowing traffic, Mr. Brooks cycles on the other side of the street, heard and saw before he made his way up towards the crossroads, before he made hurling more abusive threats. So that's what they said. So this guy, I said to him, would you recognise this, Mr. Taylor? He said, it's you. So I said, there you go, that's a third of doc identification. So the judge, at this point, realising, after the prosecution said that was their case, and I was in the middle of questioning, stopped the case and said, right, is there CCTV of this? CPS said, I don't know. He said, well, go and find out. CPS came back and said, yes, there is, but it's of no evidential value. He said, right. He said, I didn't ask you that. I asked you if there was CCTV. Because he's just trying to establish, because he's realised that I'm sick. I'm not even saying that I was there at this point, because I don't need to. So he came back and they said, yes. And they said they can have it presented to the court with it 2 weeks later. So he said to me, right, Mr. Taylor, you've got the option of objecting at this point, whether we produce it, because they haven't produced it in the original case. And I said, no, I've got no objection whatsoever. Let's really see what happened there that day. So he said, okay, and we moved on. So 2 weeks later, I've received the DVD. Now, it may or may not have been me for 3 seconds on the camera going around the corner in the court with a smile on my face. It may or may not have been me. But there was no kung fu kicking outside. It showed no arguing inside the court. It showed nothing at all. So when
I'm sorry, but I fail to believe that. I actually think that you're a ninja.
Oh, Ninja Turtle, man. That's me.
And Mithrin thinks so as well. And it just popped in the chat room, guys, a ninja. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I don't know if you heard me laughing during that, but I mean, the story that the CPS gave, I mean, I don't think I would have been able to keep a straight face.
Oh, it's absolute fiction. It was wonderful. And, so at the at the end of it, of course, I'm not offering any defence. I've got nothing to defend. Find out who this Mr. Walker is on the 20th of January. And the funny thing was that at the original trial in the magistrates, when they had me in the police station, the clerk of the court had kept out the second statement and said that didn't need to be presented before the court. Now, the reason that didn't need to be presented was because it was on about a bloke called Mr. Walker on the wrong date. So that wouldn't have been good for the prosecution. That's why they found me guilty originally with overwhelming evidence. So the judge said, right, I'll listen to your submissions. I said, there's no case to answer. I said, there's been an abuse process, there's no case to answer. He said, we'll now listen to the contempt issues. So this started to get really good, because the first witness was the CPS, and she was a barrister who just recently, in the last 2 weeks, got the job. Almost like an initiation for her. But when I read through her statement, she was basically a defence witness. She was saying that they didn't realise that I got notes of what actually happened at the hearing, internal notes. So I had their internal notes of what happened after the incident. And neither the CPS barrister or the clerk were aware of this. But when I got them, I could see that the CPS girl, the barrister for the CPS, had been decent and had tried to do the right thing and was bullied into what had happened in the court. She was bullied into giving evidence, said she didn't want to give evidence. Let's see if I can find it here. She said that Mr. Cray, that's the fish again, Mr. Cray indicated that he wanted to proceed with the trial in Dee's absence, the defendant's absence. I said I did not think that we should. I told the clerk that my view was to wait until the defendant had calmed down and then get him back to proceed with the trial. Mr. Cray said he wanted to proceed. I was therefore required to put the Crown's case. Mr. Cray indicated to me that he did not feel the calling of Mr. Brown, Mr. Walker's witness, was necessary. The clerk indicated he would not accept the defendant's apology in any event. Now, in the meantime, of course, I've rung the clerk of the court in Hereford, who's superb, and he said to me the practice directions say, he said, you can't have been arrested in the magistrate's court. I said, well, he said, no, the practice directions say that there's cooling off periods and blah-de-blah-de-blah. And I said, well, I can assure you I have. So I made myself conversant with the practice directions concerning that. But so she basically was my witness and established herself as such. The we then had the clerk, so that was wonderful because I had the clerk in the box for an hour and a half, and it was wonderful. I asked him questions. I said to him, he was obviously, because his first statement about the matter was that I was the legal advisor that dealt with the above case yesterday. Now, he didn't know I had these notes, remember. I was the legal advisor that dealt with the above case yesterday in Aberystwyth. I was fully aware that the case would be a difficult case to deal with, given that Mr. Taylor, as a free man of the land, has a history of being disruptive in the courtroom. Mr. Taylor also has a very long antecedent history, including serving several custodial sentences, including one for 5 years and another for 4 years. So he was saying all this stuff, yeah. So when I had him on the box, I said, well, do you normally, for Section 5 cases, investigate who the hell is in front of you? Why? Oh, no, nobody, he said, no clerk in the area would take the case, and that he's dealt with these freeman types on 60 or 70 occasions, and he was called in specifically for the job. So the questions I asked him, I said, you were fully aware that I was going to, you were prepared for a fight that day, weren't you? That's what you went there for. You went there for a fight. It's a common practice to research everybody who comes forward the court for a public order, Section 5. Do special clerks get called in for freemen of the land? How did you come by this information? Given your statement, how would you describe your mental state upon entering the case that day? Were you worried, stressed, anxious, agitated? Were you expecting trouble? You were ready for a fight. You're going to teach me a lesson, right? You mentioned my long antecedent history. Did it include any convictions for disruption in a court building? What is the history of the courtroom disruption? Can you provide evidence to back this statement? Are you a member of any cults, gangs, or organisations? At which point he said to me, what do you mean? I said, well, you're saying that I'm involved in some sort of gang, are you? What are these free men? Who are they? What are they? Oh, they don't agree with statutes and acts. And, well, what makes you think I was going to be arguing? I was there to argue the case on the legal aspect of it. So we went right through this, and I said, well, are you involved in any sort of... I said, well, if people have got a belief, that comes under... what's it called, Act?
Religious freedom.
Yeah, but we've got an act for it. I've got it here somewhere. We've got an act for it. I said under that act, it's anti-discriminatory, and if you've got a belief, it's a protected characteristic. So I said, well, are you involved in any Freemason? Are you involved in any cults or gangs? He said, like what? I said, well, are you a Freemason? He said, no. I said, you're involved in common purpose. And the judge piped up at this point, what is this common purpose? And I said, well, I tried to explain to him, but a friend of mine explained later what I should have said was that it's a subversive pressure group, my lord. But I think he knew what it was anyway, but he arced up with it. So I got him in the box and basically, had an hour and a half of ripping the 9 yards out of him. And of course preparing for future cases, because this case, these things move on. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to dig up what we can. And it's almost like, I use the analogy, if we've all been called up to a field because we've been told there's a load of cabbages up there, and we go up there and we can't see any cabbages, we can't see nothing at all. So we get a couple of spades out of the shed and we start digging around, thinking there might be underground cabbages or something, and it turns up spuds. And we ring them up and say, well, we're digging up spuds here. No, it's a cabbage field. And more people are coming up and seeing these spuds getting dug up and listening to these clowns on the other end telling us there's cabbages in this field. So, all this stuff is ongoing. And anyway, but Tom was there at the hearing, and so was Sue, and so a load of great people from down in Wales supporting us. And basically, the original charge was my appeal was upheld. There was no case to answer. The judge said there was no case to answer in the matter. He upheld their end for dismissed the appeal against the contempt, which is wonderful because it means it goes up to the next level. But the charge itself, because when I questioned the clerk thought in the box, I said to him, right, what is contempt of court? And of course, they all started flapping around then because I'm the lay person here really, and I said, right, are you aware of contempt of court as per Archbold? Because contempt of court isn't waving your hands around and getting cross, right? I said, judge's shoulders are too big for that, so should have yours be. I said, contempt of court is all about the due administration. of justice inside. So I tried to read a little diplock out, and the judge wasn't having that at all. He that's the only time he got a bit off with me. He wasn't having that at all, but which I did address later, because what I said to the clerk of the court, right, it wasn't a court that day. I didn't consent to it being a court, and it's got no place. It's claiming to be a court. It wasn't a court that day. It was an administrative hearing. But if I did consent to it being a court, and I had consented to it being a court, then you'd have been in contempt of it. Because the due administration of justice requires first the unhindered access to the constitutionally established court, and you were hindering my access at that. So we had all this sort of banter going on, which was great. And again, it was in a Crown court, so we're not, it's a court, it's on the record, and then we'll move on. So the judge at the end of it said, right, dismiss the no case to answer. You're correct, but I'm going to uphold the contempt. So, which I didn't want. I wasn't interested in appealing in the first instance, because I thought, well, if I get the one charge kicked out, it's going to be interesting then trying to uphold the second. But this is what we're doing. We're experiencing all this stuff, and so that's a breakdown of. I mean, I could go right through the cross-examination and all that, and I say it was entertaining. Tom was there. We all had a good laugh, and we all came out of it. And for a section 5, I mean, the funny thing was, I asked for my court costs, and I said to the judge, I want my court costs. So he said, what are they? So I said, right, well, I had to get back from Aberystwyth when it was originally arrested, and I then had to go to the next court case, and then I had to get home from Swansea prison. I've had to come back out here again and then go home, and then now you're adjourned for 2 weeks, and I'm back here again, and I have to get back home again. So I said, £150 would be reasonable. And they retired, and they came out, and he wouldn't give me my court costs. And so at this point, I started smiling, and I said, oh, come on, you wouldn't even give me a few shekels for the petrol. You know what I mean? But this is the mentality of what's going on. So, but I mean, ultimately we won. So we won, all that palaver, all that nonsense. And of course, I can now address all these issues, these solicitors. Obviously, I want their indemnity details for the actions. That's what's gone on with these people. So I'll be taking them to task. But it just gets better and funnier and funnier.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left before we have to say good night. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you, Tom, first the floor. Just any message you'd like to give people, anything that you'd like to wrap up with, anywhere, any websites, any Facebook pages, or anything like that that you're involved in. We'll give the floor for a few minutes, and then we'll do the same with Guy.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And I'd like to thank Young Grasshopper for doing so well in Wales as well. We've got my court case on the 14th, and I'd like to thank everyone who's already said they're coming along, and I'd like to thank everyone who's been supporting us, my family and myself. They've been brilliant. We've got that's.
Oops.
Eviction from.
I think we're losing you there, Tom. Can you start again? I don't know. Is it same at your end, Andy? Your mic's not on, Andy. I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'm just losing Tom there. He's dropping in and out.
Okay. On the 14th, you've got my court case. You can hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep. Okay. 14th court case. We've got quite a few people coming along, and to give you a heads up, there's a documentary being shot as well with Channel 4 with us, and they'll be coming along because they've been also following the trolls as well, so they're going to get a bit of publicity. So I'm looking forward to them sticking their head about the parapets. On the 16th, we've got the evictees meeting, and that you can contact us on Facebook, Eviction Fraud of the Bank, Evictees and Families Unite, and my own one, Tom Crawford. And then on the 23rd, there's a meeting in London, the Hive at Dalston, and that's Kingsland Road. That's 260, I believe, to 264 Kingsland Road, Dalston. And then one for you lads and everyone that's listening on the 31st of this month, everyone that's been active doing things, we're having a meeting and we're all coming together. The British Constitution party or group are there organising this so we can get a bit more power to our elbow by numbers. So if you're in anything that's active, individual and groups, come along, because it's really important now. While the Conservative Party and the Labour Party in disarray, it's time for us to do what we need to do while they're in confusion. So come along to that, and we're being very busy. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone that's supporting us. Come to the meetings, come to the groups, and come together.
Thank you, Tom. And just before we let Guy do his little bit and let us have all his links and what's going on, we got a question there, didn't manage to read out, from Unique Lee, and it refers to Lee's recent appearance in court, and quite successful it was by all accounts. But he's saying that when he was there, a legal advisor told him when he used the term objection that we're not in America. So the question is for Guy, what would be the answer to that statement? What other word would one use to make an objection, or is that just simply rubbish?
Well, as a layperson, that we don't have to go down these roads, do we? Because we're lay people and we need them to assist us. Yeah. And so objection's as good a word as any other, really, I think. I mean, any reasonable person of reasonable standards will understand what you're saying. And that's the difficulty they got with people who represent themselves. Yeah, we don't have to play by some sort of code in practice in the Crown Court, and that's why if we stand in front of a jury of our peers, they can understand that what we're trying to say and what we're trying to do, and that's our strength. A jury, juries have always, even if you've admitted something and you pleaded guilty to it, you can still plead not guilty in the Crown Court and ask a jury to come out with a perverse verdict under jury nullification rules. So, yeah, I mean, look, give it whatever word you want. I just subjected. Whether it be right, whether it be wrong, as a layperson, that was my interpretation. Perhaps I watched too many Perry Mason films. But, yeah, that's what I did, yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks. And will you be coming up to Nottingham on the 31st, Guy?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Oh,
yes,
excellent.
And the Hive as well. So I'll be in both those places. And like I say, if anyone can wants to turn up and give a bit of support to the pensioner that I'm helping on the 26th in Nottingham Crown Court, 10:30 in the court 3, or as was said earlier, the great idea about in the Wetherspoons an hour before.
I thought you were talking about me for a moment there, Guy.
No, you're always in Wetherspoons.
I was talking about the pensioner.
Oh, right. Oh, well, no, we know you. We know the pensioner.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I mean, that's the date. Just reaffirm everything that Tom said, and I'll be at the Hive. I'll be at the meeting on the 31st, and like Tom said, what we're trying to do really is, there's a lot of people, members in the British Constitution group. They're not trying to just say that it's their show and they're running it. Anyone who's involved in any groups, we're all trying to get under some sort of umbrella heading, because I mean, really and truthfully, working together, we've got to be lots of arrows, inside the quiver, and this is our way forward, and let's keep it going.
Absolutely. So thanks very much for that, guys. It's always great. Sorry, have you got any links you want to give out to people where they can keep up with what you're doing, Guy?
Yeah, well, if you go to Magna Cartman on Twitter, or you've got Guy Taylor Forbidden Law, I think it's the name of it is, and Guy Taylor Issues are 2 Facebook pages where there's just basically posts about what's going on and what's interesting to all of us.
That's brilliant, Guy. Thank you very much, and thank you to both of you for coming on tonight. It's always great to have a catch up from you guys, and I'll certainly see you both on the 31st. So I'm looking forward to that one. I think it should be quite well attended, because Nottingham does seem to be quite pivotal. It seems to be epicenter of everything that's going on in Britain at the minute, and I'm really interested to see what happens there. So thank you for coming on, guys. Wish you all the success in the near future, and hope you come back on and tell us how that goes as and when the time comes. Thank you, Jason, as always. Great co-host as usual. And thank you to everyone for listening, because without you, we'd be just talking to ourselves. And that just leaves me to play out with a little bit of music. Thank you, guys, and good night.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, lads.
Good night.
See you later.